My name is Evelyn Harper. I'm 68 years old and work part-time as an administrative clerk at the county office. I spend my days filing reports, balancing schedules, and smiling at people who forget my name but need my signature. Order keeps me sane. Paperwork is my peace. That Friday evening, peace ended. I came home after a long shift holding 2 grocery bags that cut into my wrists. The house smelled like stale beer and fried onions. The living room light flickered a bulb I'd asked Dylan to replace 3 times. He was stretched across my late husband's leather recliner socks, off remote in one hand, arrogance in the other. "Grab me a beer while you're up," he said without looking away from the TV. I froze. For 34 years I'd come home to a husband who said, "You look tired, honey. Sit down." Now I heard "grab me a beer" from my daughter's husband. Before I could respond, Megan walked in from the kitchen, wiping her hands on a dish towel. Her tone carried that new sharpness I had learned to dread. "Mom," she said slowly, as if speaking to a child, "either you help him and stop acting like a guest here, or you leave." My fingers loosened. The grocery bags hit the floor. Milk splashed across my shoes. For a second time, folded. I saw the day I paid the down payment for this house, $80,000 from my retirement. I saw her graduation, her wedding, every bill I had quietly covered. Then I heard myself breathe out one word. "All right." Dylan smirked, thinking victory looked like a woman's silence. "Good," he said. "Start with that beer." I smiled instead, a quiet, almost polite smile that made him pause. "I'll pack," I said. The smile vanished from his face. Megan blinked as if my words didn't fit the script she'd written in her head. I walked past them, steady, to my bedroom. The old suitcase waited on the closet shelf, the same one my late husband Thomas had bought for our honeymoon to Yellowstone. Its handle was worn smooth like a memory that refused to fade. As I lowered it onto the bed, my hands didn't tremble. They organized. They folded. They planned. From the hallway, I heard muffled voices, Dylan's anger rising, Megan whispering that I was just being dramatic. I zipped the suitcase, grabbed my purse, and opened the front door. The spring air hit my face like truth. Outside, my neighbor Norma Blake, 70 and twice divorced, was watering her garden in a bright pink robe. Finally moving honey, she asked. I'd offer my truck, but it leaks more than my ex-husband. I couldn't help but laugh. "Thanks, Norma, I'll manage." "Well," she said, "if you need backup, I've got pepper spray and a frying pan. I'll call if it gets cinematic," I replied. Behind me, the house stayed silent. No one followed. No one apologized. I stepped off the porch suitcase, rolling over the cracked concrete, each click a heartbeat of freedom. That night, I checked into a small motel on the edge of town. The room smelled of pine cleaner and faded summers. I sat on the bed and stared at the phone. It didn't ring. Not that night, not the next morning. But 7 days later, 11 missed calls. Every vibration sounded like the past trying to bargain. I didn't pick up. I was too busy planning something they'd never see coming. Not revenge, something sharper. Justice with a smile. Because when my daughter gave me an ultimatum, either serve her husband or leave, I chose the only option that ever leads to peace. I smiled, took my suitcase, and quietly left. And that was the moment my real story began. The Maple Lodge Motel looked tired, like it had seen too many people escaping something. The paint peeled near the windows, the neon sign buzzed like a restless thought. I carried my suitcase up the narrow staircase and unlocked room 7. Inside, the air smelled faintly of bleach and pine, the kind of scent that promised nothing but a clean start. I set the suitcase down and sat on the edge of the bed. The springs groaned beneath me. Even they sounded exhausted. Outside, cars hissed past on wet asphalt. The world kept moving as if my life hadn't just collapsed in the span of one sentence, either serve him or leave. I opened my purse, pulled out a small stack of papers, and spread them across the tiny desk by the window. Bank statements, insurance policies, old receipts, everything organized in careful rows. I turned on my laptop, the blue glow painting my face like a late-night confession. I'd spent $42,000 on Megan's college tuition, $19,000 on her wedding, and $80,000 for the down payment on the house she now called theirs. I thought I was helping them build a future. Turns out I was building a cage. The cursor blinked at me like a silent accomplice. The first tab opened First National Bank, mortgage account. My fingers hovered over the keyboard for a moment, then began to type with steady precision. Click. Log in. Click. Cancel automatic payment. Each confirmation window felt like a lock snapping shut one by one. Next came the insurance company. Dylan's shiny silver truck and Megan's SUV had both been under my policy for 3 years. I called the hotline. The operator sounded young, chipper, and oblivious. "Mrs. Harper, may I ask the reason for canceling these vehicles from your plan?" I smiled, even though she couldn't see it, because apparently I'm the housemaid now. She laughed awkwardly, unsure whether it was a joke. I wasn't sure either. Then came the credit cards. Megan had been an authorized user on 3 of my accounts. I could almost see her reaction when she tried to buy her favorite scented candles next week, and the card declined. The thought made me chuckle, though guilt quickly followed. Not guilt for stopping the money, but for realizing how long I'd been blind. My phone buzzed. Unknown number. I let it ring out. Silence returned heavy, but not unbearable. I clicked open my final spreadsheet, the master list of every expense I had covered for the last 5 years. It looked less like generosity and more like a ransom note I had written to myself. Thunder rumbled outside. The lights flickered. I found myself staring at my reflection in the dark window, a faint silhouette framed by blue light and rain. The woman staring back wasn't the meek retiree they thought she was. She was focused, methodical. The motel's landline rang suddenly sharp and unexpected. I jumped, knocking over my pen. Heart pounding, I answered. Wrong number. Some trucker looking for a Louise. My pulse refused to calm. The quiet revenge I'd started felt less quiet, now it felt alive, electric. I sat back down, wiping my palms on my skirt. My laptop screen blinked again, the system asking for final confirmation. "Are you sure you want to proceed it?" Read. "Yes," I whispered. Click. By the time I closed my laptop, their world had already started to fall apart. I leaned back in the creaking chair, exhaling slowly. Somewhere down the hallway, a couple argued about car keys. A baby cried. Life went on. But in that small, dimly lit room with the hum of the fridge and the rain tapping the window, I felt something I hadn't felt in years. Control. I brewed the motel's instant coffee packet, watched it swirl in the paper cup, and thought of the week ahead. Megan and Dylan would soon realize the current had stopped flowing. They would call. They would panic. And when they did, I'd be ready. Outside, lightning flashed across the sky, illuminating the parking lot. My car sat there, rain beating on its hood like a quiet ally. I whispered to the storm, "Let's begin." On the 7th morning, my phone lit up before sunrise. 11 missed calls, 7 voicemails, 3 text messages, 1 from Megan, 1 from Dylan, and 1 from an unknown number that smelled like trouble, even through the screen. I sat up in the motel bed, hair messy, mind sharp. The clock blinked, 6:14 a.m. Rain whispered against the window again, steady, almost polite. "Megan, Mom." The mortgage bounced. The bank's threatening foreclosure. "Please call me. We can fix this." The next one came seconds later. "Dylan, you better fix this, old lady." I stared at his words until the letters stopped meaning anything. Old lady. That was supposed to hurt. But it didn't. Not today. Today it sounded like a title I'd earned the hard way. I pressed play on the first voicemail. Megan's voice was shaking. "Mom, please, they're saying the account is frozen." Dylan's furious. "We can't pay the utilities. Just tell me what to do. Next message." Dylan again, louder this time. "You can't just walk away from this, Evelyn. You think you can control us? You'll regret it." Click. Delete. I played the next one. The robotic tone of the bank's automated system. Your verification code is 472-619. Please confirm transaction history for account ending in 2047. I reached for my notepad, wrote it down neatly, underlined it twice. Administrative revenge, the kind that runs on pen, ink, and patience. Each voicemail had a purpose. Each number was a breadcrumb. I logged them carefully, line by line, like a case file. When you've spent your career buried in government paperwork, you learn that power hides inside documentation. A knock startled me. I turned. Norma stood in the doorway holding 2 styrofoam cups. Her gray curls were tucked under a baseball cap that read, "Don't test me, I'm retired." "Morning sunshine," she said, handing me 1 cup. "You look like someone plotting a takeover." "Something like that," I replied. She took a sip, peered at the scribbles on my desk. 11 missed calls. If stress burned calories, your son-in-law would be invisible by now. I laughed for the first time that day. You might be right. Norma sat down beside me, elbows on knees. "So what's next? You going to sit here collecting voicemails or do something dramatic? I'm not sure yet, but I need to see what they've done with my name at the bank." Her eyebrows rose. "You think they used your info? I think Dylan's ego needs more money than his paycheck provides." Norma whistled. "That's a dangerous combination, ego and empty pockets." She wasn't wrong. I remembered the expensive watch he flashed during holidays, the credit card that Megan pays off later, the whispers about a poker club in town. I turned on the small motel TV. Local news droned softly in the background, another storm warning another accident on Route 8. Everything looked ordinary, but I could feel the shift, the invisible tension tightening around my life, like a belt pulled 1 notch too far. The phone buzzed again. "Megan." I let it ring. Then another call. Dylan this time. I answered. "Evelyn." His voice was sharp, frantic. "The bank says your name's still on the mortgage. You can't just cut off payments. That's fraud, no Dylan." I said calmly. "Forgery is fraud. Canceling my own payments is called responsibility." He cursed under his breath. "You don't know what you're doing. I know exactly what I'm doing. I'm protecting what's left of me." I hung up before he could answer. My hands didn't shake. They itched for clarity, for justice. Norma grinned. "You're colder than my freezer, honey. I like it." I smiled back. "You should see me at tax season." We both laughed, the kind of laughter that came from exhaustion and survival. Then my phone chimed again, this time, a new email from First National Bank. Subject line, urgent account access, review required. My pulse quickened. I opened it. A digital form requested verification of my signature from a recent document, something I had never signed. Attached a PDF labeled Home Equity Extension, Harper Residence. I leaned closer, scrolling through the blurry scan. At the bottom was my name, written in a shaky imitation. Dylan had forged my signature. My breath caught part fury, part disbelief. Norma watched my face change. Bad news. "Worse," I said quietly. "It's forgery." She straightened. "Then it's time you stop sipping coffee and start making moves." She was right. This wasn't about money anymore. It was about proof. And proof, I had learned, always lives on paper. I opened my laptop again, downloading the attachment, saving it to 3 separate folders, and emailing a copy to my old friend Paula Jenkins, the branch manager I'd worked with years ago. The subject line was simple. "We need to talk. Urgent." Within minutes, Paula replied, "Come in tomorrow morning, 8:30 a.m., discreetly." I leaned back, feeling both dread and power settle in the same space. Dylan and Megan were scrambling. I was strategizing. Outside, thunder rolled again, closer this time. The motel lights flickered. Norma looked toward the window. "Storm's moving in." "Good," I said. "Maybe it'll wash away whatever's left of their arrogance." She chuckled. "Remind me never to get on your bad side." "You're safe," I said, half smiling. "You bring coffee." The rain intensified, drumming against the roof like applause. I gathered the papers, folded them neatly into a manila folder, and slid it into my bag. The weight of it felt satisfying, like holding evidence of truth in a world built on lies. Before bed, I played the last voicemail one more time. Megan's voice cracked. "Mom, please, Dylan's losing it." The bank called again. "Please call me back." For a moment, my heart softened. She was still my daughter, but sympathy and strategy rarely coexist. I turned off the phone, placed it face down on the nightstand, and looked out into the rain-washed parking lot. Somewhere Dylan was probably shouting into the void, blaming me for the dominoes falling. But he never realized I'd been building those dominoes for years, quietly, patiently. Now they were finally falling exactly where they should. Tomorrow, I would walk into that bank, shake Paula's hand, and see just how deep Dylan's little empire had rotted. I smiled, whispered into the storm outside, "Let the paperwork speak." The next morning, I walked into First National Bank with a folder clutched tight against my chest. The air smelled of lemon polish and stale coffee, clean, professional, and quietly judgmental. People in banks act calm. It is how they hide panic. Paula Jenkins spotted me from her glass-walled office and waved. Same short haircut, same gold bracelet she'd worn since the Clinton years. She closed her laptop and stood as I entered. "Evelyn Harper," she said, smiling with a mix of surprise and concern. "You look like someone about to start a very interesting morning." "I wish you were wrong," I said, sitting across from her. Paula locked the office door and pulled a folder from her drawer. It was thick, too thick for good news. She slid it across the desk. "You need to see this." I opened it slowly. Inside were printed loan applications, copies of property deeds, and a scanned signature mine. The handwriting was shaky, uncertain, but close enough to fool anyone in a rush. "He claimed you signed this 3 months ago," Paula said quietly. "A home equity loan for $60,000. The application listed him as co-borrower, your daughter, as secondary contact. Said you wanted to remodel the kitchen." I stared at the pages until the words blurred. Remodel the kitchen. The same kitchen I'd scrubbed after every holiday meal, the same one Dylan called outdated. He'd been preparing this for months. My fingers tightened around the paper. Did the loan go through? Paula shook her head. "No. Our verification team flagged it. The signature looked off. When they tried to call you, he answered your phone and said you were recovering from surgery." My stomach turned. "He used my phone. He had your numbers, your address, your tax info, everything. He even produced a forged ID copy." I leaned back, exhaling through my teeth. He really thought this through. Paula rubbed her temples. "Evelyn, this isn't some impulsive thing. He's been structuring accounts under your name, small credit lines, short-term transfers. It's classic familial fraud, subtle but dangerous." I closed the folder gently. So he was going to take the house, the equity, and the credit score. Basically, yes. We sat in silence for a moment. Then Paula sighed long and low. "We used to worry about hackers. Now it's in-laws." Despite myself, I laughed. A short, dark sound. "At least hackers don't drink your beer and call you old lady." She cracked a faint smile. Touché. Then her expression turned serious again. "I made copies of everything, applications, voice logs, internal notes. But officially, my hands are tied unless you file a report. This has to go through law enforcement." I stood clutching the folder. "Then that's exactly what I'll do." As I walked out of the bank, the air felt sharper, cleaner. The wind carried that pre-storm energy. Something was about to break. At the crosswalk, I nearly collided with a teenager on a bike. He swerved, shouted an apology, and kept going. I smiled grimly. For once, it wasn't me who had to get out of the way. I drove straight to the Maple Falls Police Department, a small brick building that looked like it had been built for Mayberry but forced to serve a modern world. Inside the front desk, officer looked up from his computer. "Morning, ma'am." "Need to file something, yes," I said. "Fraud, forgery, and stupidity, if that's a category." He grinned. "We'll stick to the first two, detective or patrol, whichever deals with family crimes." He chuckled. "That'd be Officer Ramirez." Down the hall, last door on the left. Officer Leo Ramirez looked about 40 broad shoulders, kind eyes, and a cup of coffee so strong it probably qualified as evidence itself. His office smelled of paper and burnt toast. "What can I do for you, Ms. Harper?" he asked, motioning to a chair. I set the folder on his desk. My son-in-law forged my signature on a bank loan, tried to take $60,000 against my house. He raised an eyebrow, flipping through the pages. "That's bold." "He's not bold. He's desperate." Ramirez nodded slowly, scanning the documents. "You're lucky your bank caught this. I've seen people lose everything before they even realize it's happening." "I worked in administration for 30 years, I said. "Paperwork doesn't scare me. People pretending to be family, that's what does." He leaned back, tapping his pen. "We'll open a fraud report today. I'll need a formal statement, copies of your ID, and the originals of these documents. Once filed, we can notify the Financial Crimes Division." I exhaled. "Good. What about keeping him away from me?" "That's the restraining order part," he said. "If he forged your name, there's a clear threat pattern. You can request a temporary protection order today. We'll send the sheriff's deputy to serve it." The words sounded procedural, almost boring, yet they filled me with something close to relief. "And about the house?" I asked. "File an eviction. He's been living there under your name. Legally, you can have him removed once the 30-day notice expires. Want me to help you draft it?" I nodded. "Please." He opened a blank form and started typing. The sound of his keyboard was steady, almost musical, like a small orchestra playing Justice in 4/4 time. When he printed the papers, I signed them with deliberate care. Each stroke of my pen felt like reclaiming territory that had been quietly stolen. Ramirez stapled everything neatly. "We'll process this within 48 hours. After that, he's legally barred from the property. If he shows up, call 911 and mention this report number." He handed me a carbon copy. The ink was still wet, smudging slightly under my thumb. For the first time in months, I said quietly, "I'm not scared. I'm filing paperwork." He smiled. "That's how most wars start." Ms. Harper quietly in an office. Outside, the sky had darkened. Rain gathered in the gutters, running in fast silver lines down the pavement. I tucked the documents under my coat and crossed the street toward my car. Every raindrop that hit my face felt sharp, like punctuation marks closing an old chapter. Behind me, thunder rolled low, steady, certain. This wasn't fear anymore. This was strategy. And for once, I was ahead. By Monday, my name and Dylan's were everywhere in Maple Falls. Small towns have their own internet made of church parking lots, beauty salons, and checkout lines. And once gossip starts, it travels faster than any broadband connection. I first heard it at Henderson's grocery, right between the apples and the cereal aisle. A woman in a floral scarf whispered to her friend just loud enough for me to hear. "They say Dylan Ross tried to steal from his mother-in-law." Her friend gasped. "No, the one who used to drive that silver truck. The same." She caught him forging papers at the bank. The police got involved. I reached for a box of oatmeal, pretending not to notice, but my smile gave me away. From the next aisle, Norma's voice boomed, "Evelyn, they're talking about you again. Congratulations, honey, you're officially breaking news." I turned to see her pushing a cart filled mostly with donuts and sarcasm. "You didn't need revenge," she said, grinning. "Just small-town gossip. It's cheaper and way more efficient." I chuckled. "I didn't start anything, Norma. I just filed the truth." She winked. "And the truth, apparently, has Wi-Fi." By the time we reached the checkout, the cashier gave me a sympathetic smile. "Rough week, Mrs. Harper." I swiped my card calmly. "Not rough, dear. Just productive." Outside, the autumn air was cool and crisp. Maple leaves spun down the sidewalk like confetti for a parade I hadn't meant to lead. My phone buzzed nonstop, unknown numbers, messages, people pretending they just wanted to check in. Curiosity always wears the mask of concern. Later that afternoon, Norma joined me for coffee at the motel. She slid into the seat across from me, balancing 2 cinnamon rolls on a napkin. So she said, "Do you want the official gossip update?" "Always." "Okay." Apparently, Dylan's boss fired him this morning, said his personal matters were bad for the dealership's image, and someone saw Megan crying in front of the bakery. Whole town's buzzing. I stirred my coffee, the spoon clinking against the cup. Actions have consequences, even in small towns. Especially in small towns, Norma said, tearing her roll in half. We run on consequences. Her words hung in the air between us, sweet and sharp as cinnamon. That evening, as I walked downtown, I felt the shift. People didn't pity me anymore. They respected me quietly, awkwardly, but sincerely. A nod from Mr. Keller at the post office, a wave from the librarian. Even Pastor Cole's wife stopped her car to tell me, "We're praying for your peace, Mrs. Harper." I appreciated the sentiment, but peace wasn't the goal. Truth was. 2 days later, Dylan struck back. Norma called first. "Turn on Channel 6, Evelyn." On the screen, a local reporter stood in front of the police station. The headline read, "Elder Abuse Allegations Under Review." The segment was brief but venomous. Dylan claimed I was losing mental clarity and being manipulated by others into filing false claims. He told them the entire situation was a misunderstanding. The station aired a photo of him and Megan smiling at their wedding, all polished innocence. I felt my stomach tighten, not from fear, but fury. He was rewriting the story again, counting on charm and public sympathy to erase facts. My phone rang seconds later. Megan. "Mom," she sobbed, "you're ruining our reputation. People are saying awful things. Dylan says you're confused, that someone's taking advantage of you." I took a breath, steady and measured. "Sweetheart, I'm not ruining anything. I'm revealing it." She sniffled. "You don't understand. This is spiraling out of control. No, Megan. It's finally under control. The truth always looks messy when it first comes out." There was silence. I imagined her sitting at that kitchen table, the same one I'd paid for realizing that lies cost more than honesty ever did. After the call, I turned off my phone and poured myself another cup of motel coffee. It was bitter, but so was justice sometimes. The next morning brought another visitor, Reverend Cole himself. He knocked politely, hat in hand, his old Ford still running outside. "Mrs. Harper," he began as I opened the door, "may I come in for a minute?" "Of course," I said, gesturing to the chair by the window. He looked around the small room, the stack of papers on the table, the worn suitcase, the unmade bed, and sighed. "This must be hard for you. I wanted to check on your spirit." "My spirit's fine, Reverend. It's my patience that's running low." He smiled softly, the way only pastors can when they're about to disagree politely. "Sometimes dignity sounds like silence," he said. I met his gaze evenly. "And sometimes silence files documents." He blinked, then chuckled. "Touché, Mrs. Harper." We sat quietly for a moment, listening to the hum of the vending machine outside. "I know the town's talking," he said finally. "People mean well, but words can wound." "Only if they're false," I said, "and these ones aren't." He nodded slowly. "Still, I hope you remember grace. It's easy to fight fire with fire, harder to stay human while you do it." "I'm staying human," I said. "I'm just using the right tools this time, law, truth, and time." He rose, adjusting his coat. "Then I'll pray the storm clears soon." As he left, I watched him cross the parking lot, coat flapping in the wind like an old flag that had seen too many battles. When the door closed, I sat back down alone with my coffee, my paperwork, and my thoughts. The motel felt smaller than ever, but also safer. Outside, a group of teenagers passed laughing. I caught fragments of their chatter through the thin glass. "Did you hear Dylan Ross got caught forging papers? His wife's mom turned him in." "No way. That's savage." I couldn't help but smile. Teenagers had a different vocabulary for justice, but the meaning was the same. Later that night, I went for a walk. Streetlights glowed amber and the pavement shimmered from a recent drizzle. Every shop window reflected small town life continuing as usual. Florists arranging roses, diners flipping pancakes, barbers sweeping hair. But behind the glass, I caught glimpses of something else, respect, curiosity, a subtle admiration that replaced the pity I'd once seen. Maple Falls had chosen its side, and for once it was mine. I returned to my motel room, pulled out my notepad, and wrote 3 words at the top of a fresh page: Phase 2 Exposure. Because gossip was only the beginning. The real reckoning hadn't even started yet. It happened on a Wednesday morning, the kind of day that pretends to be peaceful until it isn't. I went to the First National Bank again this time to sign a few follow-up documents with Paula and Officer Ramirez. Everything felt routine, too routine. Paula was flipping through papers when the glass doors slammed open. A man's voice thundered across the lobby. "Where's the manager?" Heads turned. Conversations froze mid-sentence. Dylan stormed in, red-faced and loud, waving a folder like a weapon. His tie hung crooked, his eyes wild. "I want my house released," he shouted. "You can't just freeze my accounts. That's my property." Paula's pen stopped midair. She looked at me. "Oh dear," she whispered. I sighed. Showtime. Dylan spotted me instantly, his face twisted. You think you can destroy my life and get away with it?" I stayed seated, calm, collected. "Good morning to you too, Dylan. Don't good morning me. You turned everyone against me. You think you're the victim, but you're just a bitter old woman." The room went silent. Even the security guard looked unsure whether to intervene. Paula cleared her throat. "Mr. Ross, please lower your voice. We're in a public establishment." Dylan slammed his fist on the counter. Papers fluttered. A pen rolled off and hit the floor. "You people let her take everything from me. I'm her family." Officer Ramirez, who'd been standing near the door reviewing paperwork, stepped forward. "Mr. Ross, I'd suggest you calm down before you make things worse." Dylan turned on him. "Oh, what now? You gonna arrest me for visiting my own bank?" Ramirez's tone was patient but firm. Actually, for threatening staff and clients, I could. Someone in the corner started recording on their phone. Then another. The sound of whispers rippled through the line. "Is that him? That's Dylan Ross, the one who forged the signature." I took a deep breath and stood up. The air seemed to thicken like the moment before a storm breaks. "Dylan," I said, my voice steady, "forgery is still a felony, even when done by family." The words landed like stones in water, quiet at first, then spreading fast. He blinked. "You don't have proof." Paula stepped forward, holding up a file. "We do. Multiple documents verified by handwriting analysis, and your voice on our call recordings." His mouth opened, then closed. His anger searched for a new direction and found none. "You set me up," he spat. "No," I said. "You signed yourself up." Laughter rippled through the lobby, small, nervous, but real. Even the teller at the window couldn't hide her smirk. Dylan's face flushed deeper. "You think you've won? You're making a fool of yourself in front of everyone." I leaned on the counter, quiet but firm. "Funny. I was thinking the same about you." The crowd chuckled louder this time. The tension turned electric comic in its absurdity. Dylan pounded the desk again. "You're nothing without me, without Megan." That was enough. Officer Ramirez stepped forward, his tone all business now. "Sir, that's enough. Step outside." Dylan yanked his arm free. "Don't touch me." The scene turned physical. He shoved a chair aside, knocking a stack of pamphlets to the floor. The sound echoed off marble walls. Phones lifted higher. Clicks and flashes filled the air. I saw Paula discreetly signal the guard. 2 seconds later, Ramirez had Dylan by the elbow, steering him toward the door. "Mr. Ross, you're disturbing the peace," Ramirez said calmly. "This isn't over," Dylan shouted as he was escorted out. "You'll regret this." I adjusted my coat, picked up the pen he'd knocked down, and handed it back to Paula. People always say that before they realize it is over. The lobby erupted in murmurs. A woman whispered to her friend. She didn't even raise her voice once. Another added, and she still won. Paula exhaled, shaking her head. That was cinematic. "Small towns are good at theater," I said. "They just don't usually have front row seats." We shared a tired laugh. Then I looked toward the door where Dylan stood outside, pacing under the flashing reflection of police lights. Through the glass, I saw Ramirez talking to him, calm and professional, while another officer wrote something on a notepad. Dylan pointed at me, still shouting, but his words didn't reach through the thick pane of glass. For the first time, his noise couldn't touch me. Inside, people started murmuring louder now, not in judgment, but fascination. That's the woman whose son-in-law tried to scam her. She handled him better than the cops. Guess the old lady knew exactly what she was doing. I felt no pride, just clarity. Vindication does not roar. It hums. Low, quiet, steady. Paula patted my shoulder. You did well, Evelyn. You kept your dignity. I didn't keep it, I said. I rebuilt it. As I walked toward the exit, Norma's text buzzed on my phone. Saw the video already. Facebook's on fire. Caption says, when your mother-in-law brings receipts, not excuses. Over 4,000 views. I couldn't help laughing. Small town fame, I murmured. The kind you don't apply for. Outside, Ramirez gave me a reassuring nod. He'll cool off after tonight. We'll finalize your restraining order tomorrow morning. Thank you, officer, I said. He smiled. You handled him better than most of us could. The air outside was bright and clean, washed by the drama that had just unfolded. The crowd was dispersing their whispers, trailing like smoke. One woman passing by said quietly, she didn't need to yell. She just showed up. And that, I realized, was the truth of it. Justice didn't need a scream. It needed presence, proof, and a woman who'd finally stopped apologizing for being right. I walked to my car, the weight of the folder under my arm steady and sure. When I opened the door, I caught my reflection in the window, calm, older, stronger. The storm had passed, but the world had changed. And for once, the truth was louder than Dylan Ross. Nights at Maple Lodge had become a routine cheap coffee, late news, the quiet hum of the vending machine outside my door. But that Thursday, the silence broke. It was close to midnight when the security light flickered on. At first, I thought it was the wind triggering the motion sensor. Then I heard it, a low engine idling too long, headlights slicing across my window like search beams. I parted the curtain just enough to see Dylan's truck, circling. He drove past once, then again. The third time, he slowed down. My pulse quickened, but my hands stayed steady. I reached for my phone, opened the security app Norma's nephew had installed the week before, and hit record. The live feed from the motel's outdoor camera showed the same truck looping around the parking lot, pausing near my door, then backing away. I zoomed in. His face was clear as daylight, jaw, tight eyes, manic. I whispered to myself, you never learn, do you? The red light of the camera blinked steadily, capturing everything. I called the police station and Officer Ramirez answered on the second ring. Mrs. Harper. Yes, I said. He's here. Circling the motel. Gray Ford license plate 3V. Stay inside, he interrupted. Lock the door. We're on our way. The next 10 minutes stretched like hours. The headlights kept returning, sweeping over the walls, casting monstrous shadows of the curtains. Every sound grew louder, the wind, the bed frame, even my heartbeat. Then a loud knock shook the door. Once, twice, then silence. Evelyn. Dylan's voice slurred, muffled, but distinct. You think you can ruin me? I just want to talk. I sat still, hands gripping the phone. You've said enough, I whispered to myself. He rattled the doorknob, cursed under his breath, and stomped away. Seconds later, red and blue lights flashed across the parking lot. Ramirez stepped out first, his flashlight cutting through the dark. Another patrol car pulled up beside his. Dylan tried to back away, but one officer blocked his path. Through the window, I saw Ramirez speak calmly, pointing toward the security camera mounted near the roof. Dylan gestured wildly, yelling something about family business. The second officer opened the driver's door and told him to step out. Within minutes, he was in handcuffs, the truck engine still running. I opened my door slightly as Ramirez approached. You okay, Mrs. Harper? I'm fine, I said. My voice sounded steadier than I felt. He nodded toward the corner. Camera caught everything. That's a clear restraining order violation. Good, I said quietly. Let the paperwork speak again. Behind him, Dylan was shouting, "This is ridiculous. I wasn't going to hurt her. I just wanted my house back." Ramirez turned unimpressed. "You mean the house you forged to steal? Yeah, that one's on record too." As they read Dylan his rights, Norma appeared from the neighboring room wearing a pink robe and holding a cast-iron skillet like a medieval weapon. "If he comes back," she said loudly, "I'll sauté him first, then let the cops season what's left." Ramirez bit back a smile. "Appreciate the backup, ma'am, but we've got it handled." She crossed her arms. "I'm just saying, nobody threatens my friend in my zip code." I laughed softly. "You and that pan could take down an army." "I know," she said proudly. "It's older than my second husband and twice as reliable." The tension eased a little enough for me to breathe again. Ramirez asked for a copy of the footage, which I transferred to his drive. The screen showed Dylan's truck looping, headlights flickering, his face briefly illuminated in the glow-proof, stronger than words. "He's being taken in tonight," Ramirez said. "We'll file it under criminal harassment and restraining order breach. That'll go straight to the county court." "What happens next?" I asked. "He'll be booked, processed, and likely held for 72 hours. After that, the judge decides bail, but his professional license—" Ramirez paused. "That's gone. We'll report it to the dealership's legal department first thing in the morning." I nodded slowly. "Then that's one less predator behind a desk." He gave a small smile. "You've got guts, Mrs. Harper. Most people would have packed up and run. I've done enough running in my life," I said. "The law is stronger than fear. I just had to remember how to use it." When the patrol cars finally pulled away, the parking lot fell silent again. Rain began to fall thin and cold, tapping the roof like an afterthought. I sat by the window with Norma, 2 mugs of motel coffee between us. She glanced outside. "You think he'll come back?" "No," I said. "Not after tonight. He's learning that some doors don't open just because you knock." Norma chuckled. "Well, if he does, I'll be right here with non-stick justice." She lifted the skillet in mock salute. Despite the absurdity, I laughed for real this time. The kind of laugh that shakes off a layer of fear. Across the lot, the security camera light blinked again, steady and red. A witness that didn't sleep, didn't forget. I looked at my reflection in the dark window, calm, tired, unbroken. "You made it through another storm," I whispered. Somewhere in the distance, a siren faded into nothing. By morning, the news had already spread. "Local man arrested after violating court order," the headline read on Maple Falls community page. His mugshot, disheveled eyes glassy, sat right beside it. A comment underneath read, "Looks like karma. Finally found its GPS." I couldn't have said it better myself. Ramirez texted a few hours later. "He's officially suspended. Dealership revoked his license. Stay alert, but you're safe now." I replied, "Safe isn't just about locks, officer. It's about peace." He sent back a thumbs-up emoji, professional but kind. That night, for the first time in weeks, I slept. No nightmares. No engine sounds outside. Just the steady rhythm of rain against the glass, soft and certain, like the sound of order being restored. In the morning, Norma knocked on my door holding 2 bagels and her ever-present skillet. "He's gone, I confirmed. "Good," she said. "Then let's eat. You've got paperwork to file and I've got gossip to deliver." I smiled, pouring her coffee. "Justice comes in many forms." She grinned. "And sometimes with cream cheese." We clinked mugs. For the first time, the laughter didn't feel like defiance. It felt like freedom. Sunday came dressed in sunlight and silence. Maple Falls always slowed down on church mornings, cars parked in neat rows, children clutching hymn books, the smell of coffee and forgiveness drifting through the air. I hadn't planned on going, but Reverend Cole called the night before. "Evelyn," he'd said gently, "there's something that needs to be said tomorrow, and I think you should hear it." So I went. The First Methodist Church looked the same as it had for 30 years, stained glass, glowing like jewels, wooden pews polished smooth by generations of folded hands. As I stepped inside, heads turned. Some smiled, others looked down, unsure which side of the story to believe. But I didn't come for them. I came for the truth. Reverend Cole stood at the front, his Bible open, his voice steady. Today, he said, we're reminded that redemption doesn't erase what's been done, it illuminates it. And sometimes confession is the only door that leads to peace. Then he looked toward the back pew. Megan, would you join me up front? I froze. Megan. My daughter stood slowly, her hands trembling. She looked small beneath the stained glass light. Her hair was pulled back in a rush, her eyes swollen from crying. The murmurs began immediately. She reached the pulpit and gripped the microphone with both hands. Good morning, she began, her voice barely audible. I asked Reverend Cole to let me speak. The room stilled. Even the children stopped fidgeting. I know everyone's heard rumors, she said, voice cracking, about my husband, about my mother, about what really happened. She swallowed hard. I need to tell the truth. My heart thudded once, heavy and uncertain. Megan took a deep breath. My mother paid for my education. $42,000. She paid for my wedding $19,000 and gave us $80,000 for our home. She even helped with our bills when we fell behind. A ripple went through the crowd. Reverend Cole stayed silent, hands folded. But I let Dylan convince me that she owed us more. She continued, tears spilling now. He said she was old, forgetful, that she didn't need the money. I believed him. I signed things I shouldn't have. I stayed quiet when I saw what he did at the bank. The congregation shifted uncomfortably. One woman gasped. Another whispered a prayer. Megan wiped her eyes with the back of her hand. When the police came, I still defended him. I told myself it was love, but it wasn't. It was fear. I wanted to be loved by my husband, and I forgot to love the woman who raised me. Her voice broke on that last line. The microphone caught every quiver, every confession. I felt something inside me loosen, something old and rusted giving way to light. Reverend Cole placed a hand on her shoulder, steadying her. Megan, truth doesn't destroy love. It purifies it. She nodded, staring at the floor. Mom, she whispered, voice trembling. I'm sorry. All eyes turned to me. For a moment, I couldn't move. My heart felt too full, too heavy. Then I rose slowly, feeling the wood of the pew press against my palms as I stood. The sunlight through the stained glass poured over me in gold and red, like the sky had decided to bear witness. I walked down the aisle, not as a victim, but as someone who had survived the storm and found her footing again. When I reached the front, Megan's eyes met mine, pleading, fragile human. I didn't hug her, not yet. That kind of forgiveness takes time. But I did meet her gaze and speak clearly enough for every corner of that church to hear. Truth doesn't shame you, Megan, I said. It frees you. The words hung in the air, weightless, yet immense. For a long moment, the sanctuary was silent. No one moved. Even the old clock above the organ seemed to pause. Then one by one, people began to stand. Not to applaud, but in quiet respect. It wasn't celebration. It was acknowledgement. The sound of a community realizing what redemption actually looks like. Reverend Cole closed his Bible softly. Let this be a reminder, he said, voice resonant, that justice without compassion is punishment, but compassion without truth is denial. Today, we witnessed both meet in grace. Megan covered her face, weeping quietly. A woman from the front row handed her a tissue, whispering something I couldn't hear. I stepped aside, letting her have the pulpit. This was her reckoning, not mine. From the corner of my eye, I noticed Norma wiping her own tears in the third row. She caught my gaze and mouthed, "About time." I almost laughed. Trust Norma to find comedy in a confession. As the choir began to sing softly, Amazing Grace, the morning light shifted, catching the dust motes in midair. They sparkled like tiny truths, set free. When the service ended, people came up to me, not with pity, but with respect. You raised her right, one said. Took courage for both of you, said another. I nodded, smiling faintly. Courage doesn't always look heroic, I told them. Sometimes it just looks like showing up. Outside, the church bells rang slow and sure. Megan stood near the steps, eyes red but steady. "I don't expect you to forgive me," she said softly as I approached, "but I wanted to tell the truth before the whole town did it for me." I looked at her, really looked, and saw the same girl who used to bring me dandelions from the yard, the same hands that once built sandcastles beside mine. "Forgiveness isn't a door," I said gently. "It's a path, and you just took the first step." She nodded, tears glinting in the sunlight. As I turned to leave, Reverend Cole called out Mrs. Harper. "Yes." He smiled. "Sometimes grace arrives late, but it always arrives." I returned the smile. "Then I guess it's right on time." The wind picked up as I walked down the steps, scattering leaves across the churchyard. They rustled like whispers of closure, soft and certain. And for the first time in years, I didn't feel like running or fighting. I just felt free. The house looked different when I saw it again, emptier, cleaner, almost peaceful. The realtor's sign had been removed, and the porch light, the same one my late husband once fixed on a summer evening, flickered like it remembered. I stood at the gate, hands tucked into my coat, watching the afternoon sun wash over the siding. It no longer felt like mine. It felt like a story that had already been told. That morning, I had met with the Maple Veterans Housing Foundation. They were small but real, a local nonprofit that turned foreclosed homes into safe housing for retired servicemen. The director, a soft-spoken man named Tom Whitaker, had nearly cried when I told him what I planned to do. "This house was built with sacrifice," I told him. "It should shelter those who understand it." He blinked, adjusting his glasses. "Are you sure, Mrs. Harper? You could sell it. You'd get a good price even after everything." I smiled. "I've had enough of good prices. I'm interested in good endings." By noon, the paperwork was signed, the title officially transferred. The house where I had raised Megan and lost her for a while now belonged to people who would fill it with purpose instead of greed. When I drove up that afternoon, a handful of volunteers were already there, painting, clearing weeds, carrying lumber. Even Reverend Cole showed up, still in his rolled-up sleeves, hammering nails like he'd been waiting all week for permission to do something physical with his faith. Norma stood beside me, sunglasses on, sipping lemonade like it was a press event. "Well, honey," she said, "you just turned revenge into charity. That's upper-level petty." I laughed. "Petty, yeah," she said. "You didn't just win. You made your win tax-deductible. I almost choked on my coffee. You have the strangest way of describing justice." She shrugged. "Justice is fine, but poetic justice? That's art." I watched the volunteers sanding the porch rails, heard the scrape of metal on wood, and realized how fitting it was, the same sound my husband once made while fixing the banister after Megan fell as a child. Some echoes, it seemed, were worth keeping. Reporters didn't come. There were no cameras, just townsfolk stopping by bringing sandwiches, water, or simply standing around to say thank you. One man, a retired sergeant with one leg, shook my hand. "My brother's moving in here next month," he said. "You have no idea what this means to us." "I do," I said quietly. "I really do." The town had stopped whispering about me weeks ago. Now they simply nodded when I passed the way people do, when they recognize quiet courage. Even the grocery clerk, who once looked embarrassed, now called me Miss Evelyn with a smile. By sunset, the house glowed with fresh paint and soft light. The air smelled of sawdust, coffee, and hope. And then I heard it, a hesitant voice behind me. "Mom." I turned. Megan stood at the end of the path, her hands clasped nervously, eyes rimmed red but clear. She wore no makeup, no jewelry, just jeans and a sweatshirt, the kind of clothes she used to wear before ambition took over her kindness. "I didn't know if you'd want to see me," she said. "You're here," I replied. "That's already something." She took a step closer. "I saw the article about the donation. People are saying it's incredible what you did." "It's not incredible," I said softly. "It's closure." She nodded, swallowing hard. "I've been volunteering with the church pantry these past 2 weeks, trying to do something." That's good, I said. Doing something is better than saying something. She hesitated, then looked up. Can I ever make it right, Mom? The question hung in the air, fragile as glass. I thought of the years I'd spent worrying about her, the sleepless nights, the phone calls that turned into arguments, the silence that followed. I thought of all the ways I had tried to fix things that weren't mine to fix. Finally, I answered, You can start by showing up without asking for anything. Tears spilled down her cheeks. She nodded. I can do that. I know you can, I said. We stood in silence for a while, watching the volunteers finish their work. The house looked beautiful now, new coat of white porch, repaired garden, replanted. It no longer carried bitterness. It carried beginnings. Norma came over, wiping her hands on a towel. Well, would you look at that, she said. 2 Harpers in one frame and no yelling. I might faint. Megan laughed through her tears. Hi, Norma. Hi yourself, Norma said. Your mom has been busy saving the world, so try not to mess it up again. I'll try, Megan whispered. Norma winked at me. That's progress. As dusk deepened, the volunteers packed up. Reverend Cole approached, nodding approvingly. You've given the town a sermon it won't forget, he said. I wasn't preaching, I told him. Exactly, he replied. That's why it worked. When everyone left, Megan lingered by the porch steps. Do you think Dad would have liked this? She asked quietly. I smiled, looking toward the horizon. He built that porch with his own hands. I think he'd like knowing it's still protecting someone. She leaned against the railing, tracing her fingers over the fresh paint. It feels different now. It should, I said. It's not haunted anymore. She looked at me, eyes shining in the fading light. Neither are you. That one hit harder than I expected. I pulled her into a hug, not tight but real. The kind that says you're not forgiven yet, but you're not lost either. The sky turned amber, and the church bells in the distance began their slow evening chime. As I locked the front gate for the last time, I didn't feel loss. I felt release. This wasn't revenge. It wasn't even redemption. It was balance, the quiet kind that settles like dust after a long storm. On the drive back to Maple Lodge, Norma hummed beside me. So she said, What do you call this phase of your life? I smiled. Peaceful paperwork. She snorted. Of course you'd make peace sound like an administrative task. Everything's paperwork if you do it right, I said. And for once, she didn't argue. Outside the window, the streetlights flickered on one by one, lining the road home. The past had finally stopped chasing me, and for the first time in a long time, I didn't need to look back. 3 months later, life had found its rhythm again, slow, steady, unhurried. The leaves around Maple Lake Cafe had begun to change, brushing the air with copper and gold. It was the kind of autumn that asked for forgiveness and gave it freely. Norma and I sat at our usual table by the window mugs, steaming between us. She'd ordered her breakfast of Champion's black coffee and a slice of apple pie the size of a textbook. I, on the other hand, had my usual plain drip coffee with a splash of cream and the kind of peace that takes 68 years and a few heartbreaks to earn. Officer Ramirez Leo, as he now insisted I call him, was late as usual. Norma tapped her spoon against her mug like a metronome. $5 says he shows up blaming traffic, she said. 10 says he blames paperwork, I replied. Sure enough, 10 minutes later, Leo walked in, holding 2 folders and a grin. Sorry, ladies. Paperwork took longer than expected. Norma raised her mug in triumph. Told you, you owe me pie. I smiled. Add it to my tab. I've spent more on worse losses. He sat down, shaking his head. You two should start a podcast. We did, Norma said. It's called Evelyn Survives Everything. Leo laughed. Catchy title. What's the latest episode, Redemption with Caffeine? She said, sipping loudly. I rolled my eyes, but the warmth between us was real, the kind of comfort that grows out of shared storms. We chatted about the foundation house, how it had opened last week for its first residents. 6 veterans now live there, including a father and son who'd been homeless for 2 years. The town had donated furniture, Norma had donated sarcasm, and I had donated the keys. Words going around, Leo said, stirring sugar into his coffee. They want to name the garden after you. The Harper Garden. I laughed softly. That sounds like a salad. Norma smirked. Then I'll bring dressing. Leo shook his head. You should be proud. Not everyone turns a war into a community project. I didn't turn it into anything I said. I just stopped fighting it. Silence settled, comfortable, not heavy. The kind that means people have already said everything worth saying. Then my phone buzzed on the table. A text from Megan. Mom counseling's helping. I'm working again. Can we meet soon? I'd like to see you. No agenda, I promise. I stared at the message for a long moment, the words swimming slightly from the reflection of sunlight on the screen. Norma leaned in. Is that her? I nodded. Yes. She's trying. Leo smiled. That's progress. I looked out toward the lake, the ripples catching fragments of sky. Sometimes distance fixes what closeness broke. Neither of them replied. They didn't need to. Some truths don't ask for echo. We finished our coffee slowly, talking about nothing, Norma's new neighbor with the noisy dog, Leo's half-serious plan to start fishing again the way the lake shimmered like old glass in the afternoon light. When the waitress came to refill our mugs, she noticed the old keychain on the table. You dropped this, ma'am, she said, pointing. I smiled faintly. No, I left it there. It was the brass key to my old house, polished smooth from years of turning. The last piece of metal linking me to a life I had already walked away from. I placed it on the table between us. Norma looked at it, then at me. You sure you don't want to keep it? Could make a good necklace, revenge chic. Leo chuckled. Or evidence, depending on the day. I shook my head. It belongs to the house now, to them, to whoever finds shelter under that roof next. Norma sighed. You really are a class act, Evie. No, I said softly. I'm just tired of carrying things that don't fit anymore. Outside the window, 2 children ran past the cafe, their laughter echoing from across the street. I followed the sound eyes landing on the Veterans Housing Foundation sign just beyond the lake. The yard was alive with color, freshly planted flowers, a swing creaking under the weight of a giggling toddler. Life had reclaimed the space. That's the sound of your karma paying dividends, Norma said. Sounds like peace to me, I replied. Leo smiled. So what's next for you, Mrs. Sorry Evelyn? I thought about it. About how the past few months had felt like shedding a heavy coat after a long winter. About how my mornings now began, not with worry, but with quiet purpose. I think I'll start volunteering at the foundation, I said finally. They need someone to handle the records, grant applications, things like that. Paperwork's my love language. Norma groaned. Only you could make bureaucracy sound romantic. It's not romance, I said with a grin. It's structure. Leo laughed. That's the most Evelyn thing I've ever heard. The 3 of us sat there until the sunlight began to slant gold through the window. The cafe filled with that low hum of weekend chatter cutlery, clinking chairs, scraping laughter, rising and falling like a tide. It hit me then peace isn't loud. It doesn't announce itself with trumpets. It just settles quietly in the space that used to hurt. My phone buzzed again. Another text from Megan. Mom, I'll be at the lake next Sunday. There's a small farmer's market. Maybe we could get coffee. I typed back Sunday works. Then I set the phone face down. Norma noticed. You're gonna do it? Yes, I said. But not for closure. For continuation. She nodded approvingly. You're really starting to sound like one of those wise old movie characters. I'm too practical for that, I said. Fine, she replied, standing. You're the practical Yoda. Leo laughed so hard his coffee nearly spilled. Please don't encourage her. Norma grabbed her purse. Come on, Evie, let's take a walk before he starts quoting the penal code again. We stepped outside together. The air was crisp, the kind that tastes like apples and endings. Across the street, the foundation building shimmered in the light, its porch painted white wind chimes, singing softly. A group of children were chasing each other around the front yard, their laughter rising above the breeze. One of the veterans waved at me from the steps. I waved back, heart full in a way I couldn't quite name. Norma slipped her arm through mine. "You really showed them, Evie." I smiled. "No, Norma. I showed them paperwork." Leo chuckled behind us. Guess justice really is in the details. We walked along the path that wound around the lake, our reflections rippling beside us. Ducks drifted by, lazily unconcerned with human drama. Somewhere, a church bell rang, marking the hour, slow, peaceful, inevitable. Norma stopped suddenly and pulled out her phone. "Smile," she said, aiming the camera at me. "Oh, no, you don't. Too late. Click." She showed me the photo, me standing by the lake, hair silver in the sunlight, a faint smile playing on my face. I looked older, yes, but also lighter. "You should use that for your obituary one day," she teased. "Optimistic as always," I said dryly. She winked. "Hey, planning ahead is your thing, not mine." We laughed loud and real, echoing over the water. As the sky turned pink and the sun dipped behind the trees, I sat back on the bench outside the cafe. My coffee had gone cold, but I didn't mind. Some things are meant to be savored slowly. The brass key still sat on the table, catching the last glint of sunlight. I picked it up, felt its cool weight. One final time, then placed it beside the napkin dispenser for someone else to find. Maybe a stranger would turn it into a necklace. Maybe a child would pick it up and play pretend. Either way, it was no longer mine. I took one last look at the lake, the ripples spreading wide and calm. Then I whispered, "That'll do." Norma stretched beside me. "Ready to go, St. Evelyn." "Ready," I said. We walked toward the car, the laughter of children fading softly behind us. In the end, Evelyn didn't just rebuild her life, she redefined justice. Not through anger, but through action. Not by shouting, but by signing. Her story reminds us that dignity doesn't need applause. It just needs courage, the quiet kind that stands tall when no one's watching. If this story touched you, take a moment to share where you're listening from. Every city, every story, every comment, it helps our little community grow.